From the center of the United States of America, in Wichita, Kansas, I am Tony Bruschi, and this is Real Ghost Stories Online Radio, episode number 1. It's a show that's really been in the making for several years now, and we've done some slight variations on it on Halloween of every year, sharing ghost stories from callers from my radio show, and an interview here or there when I guess the mood struck me, so to speak. But I have decided I love doing this. I've gotten some great feedback, great responses, hundreds of thousands of listens and views to our programs on YouTube and the various other places it resides online. And obviously, you guys like the show. You like the idea. So on a weekly basis, here it is. This is going to be at Real Ghost Stories Online. Every single week, we're going to be sharing ghost stories. We're going to be taking calls and sharing those stories and interviewing people in the paranormal community and sharing their stories and their findings. Everything from EVPs to haunt investigations to famous haunts, famous stories. We are lining up interviews already for future shows, and I'm very, very excited about some of them that are coming up. I can tell you this much. If you saw the movie The Conjuring this year, we are going to be talking with a member of that family that lived in the real house, and we are going to get the inside story of what it was like to live in that home in Connecticut when all of those paranormal and horrific things were happening, when Ed and Lorraine Warren came in and investigated, and also compare the movie, The Conjuring, to exactly what happened in real life, because it's always a big question, especially when you think to things like Amityville and things of that nature. What's accurate, what really happened according to the people who lived it, and what did the movie embellish upon? So we'll answer all those questions in a future show here this month. In October, we'll be putting that show out there. Where do you find the show on a regular basis? I should establish that for you. On our website at Real Ghost Stories Online. That is where we'll be posting the shows every week once we have them produced and put up. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel. If this is where you're finding us, just directly on YouTube, subscribe, and you will find more shows magically appear as time goes by, and we are going to be shooting to do this on a weekly basis. I should let you know I have a very busy schedule, so that may not always be the case, because this is obviously a kind of a hobby of mine. This is not my full-time job. Radio broadcasting is my full-time job. I work in radio. I also run an advertising agency and produce radio and television commercials throughout the world, and that can in itself be a full-time schedule. And I have a family. I have 2 daughters and a wife, and that takes up a lot of my time as well. So when I have a little window of time, which is literally how this show has come about, it's become I have a little window on Thursday nights to produce a show. I could sit and watch some mindless television, or I can produce a show and have some fun and really make something to be proud of that I really enjoy doing. And broadcasting has been in my blood since I was literally 2 or 3 years old. I have tapes of me playing radio and playing into the microphone, and it's just kind of reminiscent of that, because I'm recording this out of my home studio, so it's kind of like going back home, if you will. Normally I'm in professional studios, and my home studio is a professional studio. It's just, not the giant monstrosity that you see or think of when you think of studios, but it certainly works. So it's kind of like coming back home, and I almost feel like I'm playing radio here, but obviously, from all the shows that we've done so far and the hundreds of thousands of views, it's beyond, I guess, me talking to my cat, which was how I played radio as a child. Here, kitty, here's a new hit song from John Cicada on Kid Radio. That's kind of how I did it. But this show, all about paranormal stuff. And just so you know, it's going to be focusing on ghosts, spirits, the undead, things of that nature. We're not going to go into the UFO realm on this program, or any future programs for that matter. As far as I can see, it's going to be a focus on ghosts. That has always been my interest, and so that's what the show is going to be, because it's my show. and I can do what I want. So that's the direction we're taking it. On today's show, we're going to listen to some EVPs to kind of kick it off and just really dive into what this show is going to be all about, and hear some of those, kind of dissect those a little bit. And I'm going to be sharing an interview with you that I did a little bit earlier in the year with Eric Walter, who is a writer, director, and documentarian and a creator of this awesome documentary called My Amityville Horror. It is an amazing documentary that he put together, talking to Daniel Lutz, one of the children that were in the Amityville Horror, in the real life Amityville Horror, not the movie, but the real life situation that was the Amityville Horror. And we're going to talk to him about what that was like making that documentary and what it was like sitting down with Daniel Lutz and getting the inside story, if you will, getting the perspective on the Amityville Horror. That's another case that so fascinating to me. I remember reading that book over summer vacation as a child and just being enveloped in it. Just the story, the flies in the window, the red room, and come to find out later, a lot of it was embellished. But there was a lot to that story that was, in fact, quite true. And there's a lot to that story that was never revealed until after George Lutz's passing a couple years ago. What was found, what came out in that interview that Eric did, that, like I said, we're going to be interviewing Eric here shortly. What he found out from Daniel, the other side, the alleged other side of George Lutz, very disturbing allegations, to say the least, and also kind of put some things into perspective, kind of put some of the blocks into place, if you will, about the Amityville Horror. And it makes you kind of go, oh, well, that makes a lot more sense now, doesn't it? So anyway, we'll get to that interview here shortly at Real Ghost Stories Online Radio. Like I said before, you can view or listen to all of our shows on our website at realghoststoriesonline.com. If you have a ghost story, we would love to hear it. And if you'd like to talk with us, we'd even love to have you on the show, providing you can speak clearly. That you'd be amazed. Some folks talk to. Yeah. If you can speak clearly, you're articulate, we'd love to have you on the show to share your ghost story. You can email us. So just click on the Tell Us Your Ghost Story button on our website at Real Ghost Stories Online. And like I said, please subscribe to us on YouTube. That's going to be where we post all of these shows. Exclusively is going to be on YouTube. So you can check those out pretty much anywhere, anytime you want, on your smartphone, online, wherever you may be. So, with all of that being said, I think it's time for us to get into our first interview here. Let's give you a little background on this. On November 13th, 1974, that house at 112 Ocean Avenue in Amityville became the site of one of the worst domestic murders in American history. 23-year-old Ronald DeFeo went on a rampage and murdered his entire family, later claiming that he was driven to murder by voices he heard in the house. Shortly after that, George and Kathy Lutz, along with Kathy's 3 children, moved into that very home, thinking it would be their dream house. Yeah. It just had such an ominous look to it. I wonder if they felt any of that ominous look or that presence. You know, just remember those windows, those eye-looking windows. If I would see a house like that, I think I would turn and run the other way. What happened over the 28 days that the Lutz family called this house a home became the subject of the infamous book, The Amityville Horror by Jay Anson. And in this book, the family made claims of widespread supernatural happenings that pushed them to the brink of insanity. George and Kathy Lutz have never gone back on a single claim of the haunting and paranormal events. Daniel Lutz, he was one of their children. He was 10 years old at the time of the infamous events. And now, for the first time in 35 years, Daniel has gone on the record about his experience with our guest filmmaker Eric Walters in his new film, My Amityville Horror, which is available on Amazon Video on Demand, and also right now, you can get the DVD as well through Amazon.com, and I've also seen it on Netflix on demand as well. Eric Walters, a writer, director, and documentarian, and creator of AmityvilleFiles.com, which is one of the definitive online sources on the subject. This is his interview. This is him with us, sharing his thoughts on exactly what happened in that interview and what happened inside that house at 112 Ocean Avenue. Eric, welcome to the show. I got to ask, what made you interested in this topic to begin with?
When I was about 10 years old, I became totally enamored with the book by Jay Anson, The Amityville Horror.
Sure.
And I guess primarily because a true story was printed on the front cover.
Mm-hmm.
If you remember, it was that black cover with the devil's tail and the flies and all of this. And so I was just very obviously taken by the entire story, the allegations of a haunting. Obviously, the mass murder that had been, occurred in the house in 1974 at the hands of the oldest son. All of these things under one roof very much intrigued me. And in many ways, Amityville kind of represents, America's, if not the world's, most famous and infamous haunted house controversy.
Mm-hmm. So
I, over the subsequent years, became very interested in almost an Amityville obsessive, I guess, to the point that I was, looking into records of the Historical Society, taking trips to Amityville. I had to take photographs and meet people who worked on the case. And I actually subsequently became, friends over the phone with people like Laura DiDio, who was an investigative reporter, and actually a news assistant for Channel 5 News at the time of these occurrences that happened to the Lutz family. And so, upon this, I was just very driven with the story and very passionate about it. I developed a website, kind of what I would describe as a web archive called AmityvilleFiles.com, which is kind of a treasure trove, a creative presentation of a lot of the documentation that surrounds the story, a newspaper archive, and things that I've collected through friends and people I've met online over the years. And so, it was just a process of trying to create somewhere people could go and pull their own conclusions about what they believe happened in that house. And there are so many different theories about what happened in that house. It's very easy to say that what the Lutzes claimed happened was all a hoax and none of it ever happened. But I really think that the truth of the matter lies somewhere between it being fabricated and it being an out-and-out truth.
Before you made the film, where did you feel that the truth actually lay on this haunting story? I know you said somewhere in the middle, but be a little bit more specific as to where you kind of feel things had been or where they were sitting in reality before you talked with Daniel.
Well, for me, obviously, it was just a story before I met with Danny. I had always just, read. It was all of what I had read and talked to. I'd never actually spoken to any of the family members. So my gut instinct was, even before meeting Danny, that there was some truth to it. That obviously I don't think a family abandons all of their worldly possessions and runs from this house and flees clear across the country over nothing. Mm-hmm. While I do think that, there were very many things that have been said about this house, I don't believe everything that's been said by the Lutzes, by the media, and a lot of the truth has become misconstrued about what actually they said, and that's the actual, shame of this entire case, that it's been clouded and lost in so much misinformation over the years. To develop a real well-rounded opinion about it, honestly, you have to dig through all of the muck that surrounds the story, and that includes the DeFeo case and the subsequent families who lived there who said nothing ever happened to them strange, and there's nothing to the story, and this is all just a big hoax. I just think that's too convenient of an answer. I believe something definitely of a genuine paranormal nature did happen to the Lutz family. However, I do think that it snowballed into something now that it never actually represented, and there's been so much said about it. Mm-hmm. It's now America's most famous haunted house.
Sure.
And in many ways, there's been many hauntings that happened to other people in many ways that are more severe and I think a little bit more, I guess, powerful in nature than the Amityville case. For some reason, I think the mass murders enhanced that idea.
How did you begin communicating with Daniel?
So through Amityville Files, I was contacted one day out of the clear blue sky by a friend of his in the Queens area who said he knew Danny and Danny was interested in talking publicly. However, he wanted to speak with somebody who knew the case and didn't want to have to educate somebody on all of the story that surrounds it. Have
any of the other children, because obviously there was other children in the house when this happened, have any of them ever come forward with any pieces of information?
Yes, Christopher Coratino, who is Dan's brother, actually has spoken publicly in various venues. Similar things that Danny actually claimed to me, and in the film, of course, that his stepfather, George Letts, was involved in occult dabblings inside the house, and they believe triggered the haunting on the family. Now, of course, I don't want to speak for Christopher because that's not my job. It's not my job to speak for anybody but myself, of course. But this is widely known and something that I was obviously familiar with once I met Danny. You know, George passed away in 2006. You know, to be making allegations about someone who now is gone was definitely a concern to us filmmakers, just to be, you know, very careful to how to tread on that area.
Sure.
However, Danny's story is wrapped up in the memory of the stepfather and what he feels the stepfather perpetrated on the family.
The talks of George being involved in the occult, that was the first time I had heard it was in your film. I was unaware that the other brother had talked about that as well. Other than Danny talking about it in your film and the other brother having mentioned this over the years as well, did George ever make any references to him being involved in the occult in his later years? I know he was doing some interviews, but I had never heard...
Not to my knowledge, no. And he's been interviewed at the Times, actually, as a clip in my film about with George and Kathy are sitting on Good Morning America.
Sure.
And they're asked, you know, flat out, were you interested in the believers in the occult? And they both say no.
Mm-hmm.
And that's in the film, you know, juxtaposed with Danny talking about George being involved with satanic ritual and having books on.
I know there had been a lot of stories towards the end of George's life when he was doing interviews, and I don't know if you've heard this either, where the people who were scheduled to interview George, when he was granting some of those, prior to him speaking to them, strange things, events would be happening to the folks that were going to be interviewing. Now, they weren't tragic or anything like that, but just kind of unexplained, odd things, accidents around individuals prior to that. Had you ever heard of anything of that nature?
I can't say that I have, and I wish that I would have been able to speak with George personally.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have the good fortune many people did to speak with him, but I certainly would have pursued to get his point of view in this project. In many ways, I wish something of a first-person documentary nature, like we did with Danny, could have been done with George, because that was honestly what needed to be done.
Sure.
It would have been an entirely different film, but yeah, no, I haven't heard those stories. I think a lot of the paranormal, at least from my opinion, hauntings, you can be very susceptible to a haunting. If you believe in hauntings, if you believe in evil, then obviously it's going to be enhanced more. George, I know at the time, claimed that he was a non-practicing Methodist when they moved into the Amityville house, and neither George nor Kathy were overly religious. At the time, of course, moving out of the house, they definitely became much more involved in the church. So these allegations of George being involved in the occult and satanic rituals and this type of thing seemed very obviously the anger towards the stepfather from Danny. I felt many of his statements were colored by his anger.
Sure.
And obviously the need to put the blame on someone. I was always wondering what that is. Of course, that's my opinion. I really wanted the film to speak for itself, and for Danny to have film allowed room to breathe a little bit in that way, for people to make up their own mind, because my job as a documentarian is to be objective with the content.
Sure.
And I really think our film, because they were dealing with a boy who was 10 years old at the time, we're dealing with someone who the memory of the event now is mixed with media interpretations of the occurrences by no fault of his own, in my opinion. And I think that it's unfortunate because what the film represents for me is kind of the fuzzy line between reality and imagination.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's unfortunate. Obviously, like I said, I would love to have talked to George Lutz,
Mm-hmm.
but the story that I was able to capture and extract from somebody who was there, obviously who's never spoken publicly about this,
Mm-hmm.
and none of the kids have to this degree. This is the first time this happened in such a a feature type of presentation. It's a sad and tragic picture. Danny was a victim, and I wanted to show the utmost respect for him to come forward. And obviously, we had many discussions. It was the process of making the film. I kind of had to befriend Danny
Mm-hmm.
and tell him, this is, you're sure you want to open this door, because once, if you're not identified as the Amityville kid now, you certainly will be once this is out, now as an adult.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's a very difficult picture. And there's been so much said about this case, and for someone who was an adolescent at the time to now try to move forward and rationalize something unexplainable to a public who's already mired in decades of misinformation. As I said, it's a very difficult picture. It's not the easiest of prospects.
Did anything odd occur throughout the making of this film, whether it be, something slight or something major? Did you have anything strange happen to you or any of your crew?
I can't say that I did. I know that when we were shooting at Lorraine Warren's occult museum, and we had Danny and everyone, I know some of the camera operators and things were a little unnerved because I think of the surroundings.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a little bit of an uncomfortable shoot,
Mm-hmm.
I think I would mainly attribute that to Danny's intensity,
Mm-hmm.
and how he dealt with that entire situation.
Mm-hmm.
Because it was a difficult process of getting Danny to want to talk about this
Sure.
at all, honestly. I mean, he wanted to come forward to connect with me, but it wasn't like he was open and he was open for Danny, and I appreciate that from him. But I still look at the film and I'm flabbergasted that we were able to get as much as we did on camera and in the can in an editable fashion. But no, I can't say that anything of a paranormal nature occurred to me or my crew while we were shooting it. Thank God.
Okay. Yeah. What were your first, when you first got to sit down with Danny, before the cameras came in, when you actually had the tape recorder and you went in and you met with him, what were your first impressions of Danny?
Just a overly angry, just person. I mean, my first meeting with him was at a diner in Queens.
Mm-hmm.
And I went there, and his very first question he asked me was, what is your religion? I brought a digital recorder with me about a collection of photographs from the March 6, 1976 investigation, and you could feel the years kind of coming off his chest. He was sitting across from me, kind of, chain smoking cigarettes. It was a powerful thing. By this point, we were we weren't in the diner. We were somewhere. We were in his place, so it was fine. But it was a private thing. But you could definitely feel, some of these photographs he had never seen before. Some photographs of his bedroom, his toys on the shelf, the furniture they left, the clothes, and it was obviously an emotional thing for him.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt then that kind of my initial skepticism of this being something he was doing for attention or money or something kind of dwindled away at that point, because I realized this was almost like a cathartic sense of settling a score with himself, that he needed to, I guess for lack of a better phrase, exercise the demons of his past. That was the process of what that was all about.
When you brought the photos to him, obviously one of the most infamous photos of the case is the Ghost Boy photo.
Right.
Did you ever get his opinion on that photograph in particular?
Unfortunately, not on camera. I do have it on audio cassette, and he did talk about how he believes that it's credible, that he believes that it was something. My own opinion, actually, we've done quite a bit of friends of mine have done some research on this over the years. And, there's quite a bit of debate on that picture. I mean, it does represent a fellow who was actually brought in assistant to the Warrens, named Paul Bart, who was in the house at the time, and there's a lot of speculation whether that was actually him, because if you look closely, you can see that whatever figure is peering around the corner is wearing, appears to be a plaid, like a flannel shirt, and it appears to be eyeglasses that, when you look at it from just looking at the photograph, not up close, it looks like luminescent eyes.
Sure.
So what's more likely here, I don't know. But this camera was on a timer. It was a camera on the second floor, set up by Gene Campbell, who was hired by the Warrens to be there that night. And, there was just so many different photographs being taken at the time. And so that was just one that was found by George's secretary, I think, around after the book came out initially in the late 70s.
Because it certainly is one of the most eerie, whether it's real or not, ghost photographs that have ever been published.
Laura DiDio actually told me that, I won't go as far as, obviously I don't want to speak for her.
Sure.
She's told me that she feels, she knows there were no children in the house.
Yeah.
She doesn't know who that is or what that is, and I guess I get the sense from her that she believes that it actually was some sort of specter in the house. If you look at photographs of one of the DeFeo children, it has a striking resemblance to them.
Really?
Which is pretty chilling as well. Yeah.
Have there been, all I know from the research that I've done is that is the only photo that seemed to show anything paranormal or relatively paranormal. Is there any other photo evidence or anything of that nature that has ever come out that showed anything odd? Nothing
from the time. I know there's about 3,000 photographs of reflections on windows of
sure.
people driving up and taking pictures that some of those are very, very odd, obviously, but I wouldn't say that there's certainly no proof, concrete proof. Actually, I'm missing over one thing. That actually is briefly mentioned in the film, but never really, it's never really pinpointed. There's the infamous moose head photograph that was taken, again, by Gene Campbell in the house during the investigation, and it's a photo of Lorraine Warren, who at the time was holding an icon as Padre Pio, who was, Saint Pio was a saint at the time, and she had received this icon before going into the house and had this with her during the investigation. And, I know that George and Lorraine and others believe there's actually a formation of Padre Pio's face, which is quite striking. It looks very similar to photographs of the side of Padre Pio's face in the moose head itself.
Really?
There's different pictures, that represent, actually look like a face. But I think, again, I hate to be a pessimist, but for me, it looks very much like it could just be a formation in the actual moose's head. But it's one of those things. There definitely is no concrete proof or evidence for any of it that's been captured on camera, other than those two intriguing photographs.
In the film that you made, towards the end, you asked Daniel about taking a lie detector test, and he obviously seems almost offended by the question. I'm sure it's something he's been asked many times in the past, too. Why do you think it was that he reacted the way he did?
Well, I could answer that simply. I think he took it as an assault on his credibility. He had sat there for 8 hours, and I had allowed him, without confrontation, without me pushing any buttons, and me asking a question about a lie detector test was not me trying to, it was not I guess you'd say a gotcha question or something like that. It was really a valid question. I actually prefaced the statement with, in 1979, George and Kathy, your parents, took lie detector tests and passed with flying colors. And this is true. They were asked questions like, did you levitate? Did you see yourself as an old hag in terms of, for Kathy? And yes. And they, again, passed with flying colors. So I think it was a valid question. Your parents did this. Would you be willing to do this? And he took it, again, as an assault on his credibility from the standpoint of he had sat there for 8 hours, poured his heart out, essentially, to me, and in front of, 3 other camera operators whom he didn't know at all. And, it was an intense, he's clearly visibly shaken in the film and quite disturbed by the entire topic. And so, it wasn't my intention to elicit such a reaction out of him. However, I do think I did include it in the film at the end because I think that it keeps the question of whether this was a fabrication or whether this was the truth right on the line, because at the end of the day, that's all we're left with. The truth is unattainable in this case. There were only 5 people in that house who can corroborate their stories, and George and Kathy are now passed over. Of course, we have their story documented in so many different, formats, venues that have been, over the years. And this is the first time Danny is coming forward. Christopher's talked about it. I know his sister wishes to remain private, and I think everybody respects that and understands that. She was very, very young at the time. So I don't know. I mean, it's unfortunate. So I think the state of the case today is, in many ways, Danny represents the living embodiment of everything that's been wrong with his story in a lot of ways. Because of the memories that he I talked about, well, the film goes into heavily the idea that his memories are skewed by media versions of the events, and that's unfortunate. However, I do believe many of the things he talks about are genuine, and that he does remember these things. But also, we're talking about a child's perception on something that's been, over 35 years ago now.
Sure.
And so it's a very, very difficult picture, and obviously a sad and tragic portrait of someone who's been, psychologically damaged by something that he essentially was indoctrinated into at a very early age. That's the real Amityville horror for me.
Was there anything that Daniel told you that made your opinion of the truth about the Amityville horror sway one way or the other?
I would say that the light that's been shined on the family dynamics of the story really, gave me pause for thought, because in so many ways Danny's story is mixed. He's almost haunted by his stepfather, George. I mean, a lot of his claims of the supernatural are mixed or interlaced with his statements about the stepfather, which kind of, for me, it's I mean, I don't want to say it's the same is true for Christopher, because we haven't heard his entire story, but in a lot of ways, making statements about George perpetrating the haunting or instigating the haunting on the family, I guess says a lot about that perception of how they view that time in their life. For me, their natural father was removed from the picture and replaced by someone who was an ex-Marine, and obviously, by all accounts, I was able to talk to a very domineering personality. And so, without trying to make allegations toward someone I never met, which is, obviously the problem here, everyone was kind of unnerved by him. That I was, even Lorraine Warren, who speaks in the film about him, was kind of put off by him. So it's a difficult topic to step forward into in that area, especially since it's already such a contentious controversy.
Since the film has been completed and is now out, have you been in contact at all with Danny, and have you gotten his feedback on the film?
Yeah, actually, yes. I say yes. Just a couple days ago, when the film actually finally was released theatrically and on video on demand, he called me to congratulate me and thank me for helping him get his story told. And that obviously is probably the highest praise I could, as a filmmaker, could ever receive. Sure. Especially when it's such a sensitive topic about someone. The film's about him, and it hasn't been an easy process because Danny put an extraordinary amount of trust in me, which I greatly respect and obviously appreciate. So, yes, he's seen the film. He's happy to have gotten this off his chest. Again, I keep saying it, but I don't want to speak for him, but hopefully at some point he'll be willing to step out and talk about it publicly again. I know he told me when we started this project he was not interested in having thousands of press interviews and this type of thing, that he wanted to tell this one time and be done with it. And that's basically what we're left is right now. And so he and I are on a very cordial level.
What do you personally want people to take away from this film?
I want people to remember that, it's easy to call this story a hoax and that this was all, some sham created by the Lutzes for money. However, I don't think someone who goes through this, and you look at Danny and you look at his reaction, you don't end up that way over nothing. There was definitely something that happened to these people that was earth-shattering and completely has shaken up their lives. And the idea that someone's living in the shadow of something for the rest of their lives is something that kind of transcends Amityville. It talks about anybody trying to explain or rationalize the unexplained to the public. And I think that's kind of a topic that really hasn't really been given serious consideration before. So I really wanted to do something new with a case that really has been mistreated in the media for so many years, and I wanted to do it respectfully, but also we have to tell a story at the same time. So I think it does all of those things, and hopefully will open people's eyes to the reality of these events.
Eric, thank you for talking with us at Real Ghost Stories Online. Be sure to check out his website, AmityvilleFiles.com. A very, very comprehensive look at the murders, at all the investigations that have been done. It probably is the preeminent site, or really just plethora of information anywhere on the topic of the Amityville horror. If it's anything you've ever been interested in, you will find yourself on that site for hours, just absorbing all that is Amityville. So very interesting documentary as well. Make sure you do get a chance to watch that. Another case that somewhat relates to the Amityville horror, Ed and Lorraine Warren, who investigated Amityville horror, also investigated the setting and the haunting that became the film The Conjuring nearly 30 years after the events took place in that New England farmhouse. We'll be talking with one of the children who lived through what was The Conjuring in a future program here at Real Ghost Stories Online. So make sure you keep checking back. Make sure you subscribe at our YouTube page, and so you can be in on that when that comes up. Very excited for that interview. All right, let's move on here to some EVPs. These are always interesting to listen to and try and get an idea of exactly what is being said or what is being communicated. You can find them all over the internet. Here's some that we've picked out that I thought were particularly interesting. We'll take a listen. I'm not going to tell you what it says, and until a couple plays. So let's get to this one. This is one that I think certainly relates to kind of the topic we just talked about there with Amityville horror and the haunted home. Take a listen to this. Very clear that get out of my house. If you pick that thing up when you're walking around a haunted house, what exactly would be going through your mind if you heard that in your headphones? I think that would be, okay, I'm done. Thank you very much. I love talking about this stuff. It's a very intriguing conversation, but on the investigation point of things, I think you got me for so long, and then at some point he's got to go, okay, I'm out. How about this one?
Don't be afraid to say something.
Should we play that again?
Don't be afraid to say something.
The author is saying that it says, hold me, which is interesting. I don't know if I could get hold me out of there or just some sort of cry, almost. Here's one more.
Anybody in here with us?
That one was interesting because that one almost sounded like it was another human being. A lot of times with the EVPs, it almost sounds like there's something else. But the man says, "Is there anyone in here?" Then you hear another voice. Let's play it again.
Anybody in here with us?
It says they call me Gritch or Grinch. I wonder if that's tying into actually the Grinch. EVPs, a very interesting topic. We're going to be talking with an expert on that in another future program that we're working on lining up for you right now at Real Ghost Stories Online. We will be discussing EVPs, having some EVPs played back for us. And that is coming up in a future program. We're talking to Greg Myers, who's president of the Paranormal Task Force, Inc. in Arnold, Missouri. He's gone on several haunt investigations and has a lot of very interesting collections of EVPs and data to share with us. It's coming up on another program. One of the fun things, and this is really what started doing the show, is taking listener callers or taking listeners' calls and hearing just ghost stories from you guys. And this is something I truly invite you to do, being that this is a show that is pre-recorded and pre-produced. Obviously, we do need to get in contact with you to arrange to hear your story, to share your story. So if you have a good ghost story you'd like to share with us, go to our website at Real Ghost Stories Online and click on Tell Us Your Story. Give us a brief synopsis and a way to contact you. And if we like it and you'd like to share it, we can have you on a future program sharing your ghost story. So some of these stories we're going to have for you this evening have been from my past radio show over the years, but nonetheless some very fun, interesting ghost stories that we've collected to give you a feel of exactly what you can expect on this program in the weeks and the months to come. So go ahead, you're on the air with your ghost story.
Golf tournament in Wichita this year.
Mm-hmm.
Got a live band outside,
Mm-hmm.
lawn chairs in the grass, and a bunch of us were standing around, and somebody sat in this lawn chair. Nobody was in it, but the grass squished down, like somebody sat down in it, and we all looked at each other and kind of got weird.
Mm-hmm.
And later that night, we found out a member of the club had died that day, so we're all still talking about it.
And you witnessed this chair
Yes,
go from
somebody
just...
sat down in it.
So pressure was being applied to the
Pressure
top
was
of
being
this
applied
chair.
to the chair. Somebody sat down in it,
Wow.
and we were all standing around, and everybody got weirded out. And then it wasn't till later that night that we found out, without mentioning anything, a member of our club had passed away that day. I was totally a non-believer in that stuff until I saw that happen.
I bet. Wow. That's a great story. Thank you for the call. That's one of those things where you almost wonder, is that the member of the club? That would be what you would be led to think. That makes the most logical sense. It's that person coming back either to say goodbye or maybe they don't even know that they're not there. That's one of those things that you wonder about, like it's portrayed in movies where the person passes on, yet they're still out there living their life and going through the motions and are completely oblivious to the fact that they're not alive. Although you have to wonder, how long do you continue on like that without finally realizing no one is responding to you? Or do you just start thinking no one cares? Obviously, it can go on for quite some time. Remember what was the movie? I See Dead People. That movie, you know what I'm talking about, from the 90s. That had a lot of people fooled for a good at least 60 minutes, the way that they laid that movie out. And the characters going through the actions of everyday life. Let's take another call. Hi, you are on Real Ghost Stories Online.
When we first bought our home, we were told that there was a man that had died in his sleep there.
Mm-hmm.
My daughter at the time was probably 18 months to 2 years old. And throughout time, she would look up and she would point and she'd say, he's right there.
Mm-hmm.
Or we'd be reading a book and she would look up and she would wave at him. And, she was 2, so obviously she didn't know that it had happened, but she did tell us that he was there.
So she remembers seeing this figure.
Yes. She would look up from us reading stories and tell me. She would point and tell me where he was. And she just knew of his presence at that young age, and we hadn't mentioned anything to her about that for her to know.
Isn't that strange? You almost wonder if, kids can tap into that.
I think so, because once she got a little bit older, she never did it anymore. So I think it's something that when she was younger, she tapped in on, but grew out of.
You wonder how long kids can tap into that, and maybe it's something that not all kids tap out of if they are indeed seeing things that we cannot see, because certainly there are sensitives and mediums and people that are adults that continue to go on throughout life seeing and hearing these other people as if they were actually there. I wonder why that is, that some people move beyond it, and some people it stays with them. And why is that with some minds, some brains, that it moves on, and with others it does not? Very interesting topic for discussion on a future program. Hi, you're on the air on Real Ghost Stories Online.
When I was a kid, I slept walk, and I wasn't I never did that. I just remember I woke up and I was sitting in front of a mirror in our hallway and just staring into the mirror. And I woke up like that. All these years I've always thought, that's so strange, you know. And then I was watching TV and they had a story on ghosts and the other world. They said that back in the old days, people used to think that if you looked into a mirror and you saw your reflection, you could talk to the other side. I saw that story and I thought, oh my God, I was sleepwalking and I was trying to talk to the other side.
How old were you?
I was like preteen.
I don't know. Oh, there's a lot of teen girls, when I remember back to being that age, that love to stare at themselves in the mirror. Are you sure you weren't just like checking out your hair in the middle of the night or something?
Pretty sure. I was sleepwalking.
Sure. That's a good story. But when you think about the mirror end of thing, that's one thing that we are not allowed to purchase when we go to the antique store. That is something that that my wife has strictly forbidden. And I don't blame her. It's something I don't think I really am too keen on myself. I never really thought a whole lot of it, but it was one of those things that you learn about continue through life, and that was one of those topics. We were looking at a mirror at a store, and we're never buying that. And I had to ask why, and it was that. It's that the theory that mirrors can hold energy, and you never know exactly where that mirror was, and what energy may be in that mirror. Not exactly maybe energy you want to bring into your home and into your life. I don't fully know if I believe that, but if we're on the topic of paranormal and this whole world in general, anything is possible. You know, if these entities that people are seeing and feeling do in fact exist, then I would fully believe, and it would make total logical sense, that okay, a mirror could in fact hold some sort of energy or some sort of force, from what it has witnessed, I guess, but I wonder if it has to do with the mirror or the object itself. Is it the mirror that is doing that, or is it the object? Because you've heard plenty of ghost stories that are surrounded around an object that someone has brought into their home, mirror or not. And it makes you wonder if that it is just simply the object, and some of them happen to be mirrors. That right there, that would be a very interesting topic for us to investigate, to talk to someone who is an expert on such a thing. Is there an expert on such a thing? That's what I wonder. There must be. It's probably one of those things someone has a passion and interest for, and through the wonders of technology and the internet, we can now find that person who knows all about this and can give us some sort of insight on that the topic. It's something we will look up and try and tackle on a future show. Let's go to another call. You're on Real Ghost Stories Online.
My uncle and aunt had bought a mirror at a garage sale, and one night my uncle kept hearing somebody in the house. So he kept getting up and checking on the kids and checking the house, and they were all fine, and he didn't find anything. Well, for about 3 times he got up. When he comes back that 3rd time, the spirit had taken over his wife, and she was sitting against the headboard of the bed, and she was trying to tell him that it was the mirror, to get rid of the mirror, and the spirit would not let her do it. And finally, she was able to get it out. Well, then it made her attack him, and it went after him, and she was this little under 5 foot, little bitty person, and he grabbed the mirror and threw it out the back door, and when it shattered, she collapsed, and she was in bed for 2 weeks from the exhaustion of that thing taking her over. She remembers it taking her over and having no control. All he could think is, she's going to kill me, and then she's going to kill my kids.
You hear a lot of stories about mirrors and haunted mirrors. It makes you almost wonder, what is going on with those images that a mirror captures, or what is being captured inside the mirror? That's there you go. I guess it answers our question a little bit more about mirrors. What a coincidence there. Actually, and I'm just going to be completely honest with you here. As we're taping the show, I'm going through some of our callers, and I do not know what the callers' topics are going to be. I actually have our callers labeled 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc., and that just happened to be the next call that we pulled up from our previous topic. They're not categorized by topic, and it was just, wow. Talking about mirrors into the mirror call. Let's go to this one, see what we got. Hi, you're on Real Ghost Stories Online.
There's a housing addition that was built on top of the old Mount Carmel Academy, which was built in the 1890s.
Okay.
And when these houses were being built on this former property, there was one of the neighbors that we met, and their little boy at the time was 12, and he had a basement bedroom, and he kept saying that ladies walked through the basement and through the room, and their dog would bark every night when they first moved in. They hadn't been there for maybe a week, and he kept seeing these ladies. He described them as ladies walking through the room and through the basement. Well, of course, they just thought he was. Now, he had no idea that there was a Catholic school on this location built in the 1890s.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, about a week later, their dog died. And the vet said that it was a heart attack. Well, about a month later, I had actually picked up some pictures from the Cape and Mount Carmel school of what the area used to look like, and they had donated some pictures since we lived there. The little neighbor boy was looking through them one night with his parents, and he said, "Mom, those are the ladies, that looks like the ladies that went through the basement all the time."
That would make my hairs on my arms, which is pretty much the only place I have hair left in my body, what they wanted to know, stand on end if my child told me that story. That's, yeah. Going back to the topic of children seeing ghosts, what's interesting so many times is that it seems they don't even realize that it is a spirit or a ghost they may be seeing, because it looks so real and so present and so physically there. Is it all in perception? Is it all about how you're seeing it? Different people see different things in different ways, or some people, especially children versus an adult, seeing the apparition in a full human form, while another adult may be seeing it as a translucent or transparent form, and others not seeing it at all. I have to wonder if that has a lot to do with why some people see spirits and others do not in the same locations. Let's go to another call here. We have a few more minutes for a call at realghoststoriesonline.com. You're on the air.
There was an old mansion where I used to live in upstate New York.
Mm-hmm.
And so there was about 3 or 4 of us that got together, and every now and then the caretaker of it, they'd let us go through. Well, we happened to find this one door, and it was, you would have never noticed it was a, what's the word I want to use? It was, it looked like the wall, but we pressed it, and there was a wall, and it opened up, and we went through this little alleyway, like in behind the wall.
Sure, so it was a secret door.
Yeah, and oh my God, we were walking through it. It gives me goosebumps thinking about it. And there was cobwebs hanging down and everything. And we got halfway through the little hallway, and all of a sudden, because we had like a flashlight, our flashlight went out. Now, it's battery operated. It went out. And there was a breeze. You could feel it. It didn't take us long to get out of there.
And you were in a confined area where there wouldn't have been a way for a breeze to come in.
No, it wasn't.
That's very spooky. And especially with a flashlight going out, because that's one of those things you always hear of. If there's some sort of energy or entity in the area, it just sucks all the life out of electronic devices, especially batteries.
And it did. It just went off. And then when we turned around, we started running backward. We come through, and we were, I'd say maybe 20 feet from where we come in. The light come back on. It was like, oh, no, you ain't coming through here. It was spooky. I mean, it was crazy. And I was probably about 14 at the time.
Mm-hmm.
But, I mean, it still sticks with you. It's like, oh, my God, you're going through this secret, hallway in behind everything. And then all of a sudden, your light goes off. And there was about 4 of us girls, my sisters and a friend of ours. And then, I mean, there was no way nobody could have done that, you know, I mean, because we thought about it afterwards. But was there somebody in there? How would it do the flashlight?
I wonder if whatever it was trying to keep you away from something, and what was it?
Yeah, we still to this day, we never went back.
I don't know if you want to know what it was. That's the other caveat of the whole ghost hunting and investigation and trying to call these things up. Is what is it that we are investigating and talking about? I fully believe that there is more to the world of ghosts than just our dead loved ones, or maybe not even loved ones, maybe very bad dead people that were once living and very bad in life. That may still be very bad in death on the other side. I certainly believe there are things that may never have been living to begin with that are out there causing some sort of negative energy or wreaking havoc upon the people that cross into their path, or its path, if you will. A few more minutes, a few more calls. Hi, you are on the air on Real Ghost Stories Online.
I moved into this house when I was about 9 years old, and as soon as we moved in there, my mom started having, I thought with nightmares. She said that she'd wake up in the middle of the night, and this guy would be standing over her, this ghost, you know. There was an old cellar-type basement, and I was down there just kind of looking around one day, and they had, like, the concrete walls with the dirt, and there was a picture there with a little bit of dirt over it, and I got it, and it was this guy, and I took it upstairs to my mom and showed it to her, and she immediately threw it. I was like, well, what'd you throw it for? She said, that's the guy I've been seeing standing over me.
So this was probably a previous resident of the house.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Did he die there? Is there any story to that you ever found?
I don't know. We never did check into it, but we didn't end up living there much longer.
I was just going to ask, how much longer did you stay?
Yeah, not much longer at all.
That's something you really have to wonder about, especially when you hear stories of haunted houses and people that experience horrible things and stay in the house. You have to wonder, what is making you stay in the house? That's a question that I think is probably a very personal one, and based on a lot of decisions. And unfortunately, for a lot of folks, it ends up being a financial decision because, well, we can stay living with the ghost and being tortured, or we can live under the bridge downtown. And unfortunately, the option ends up being, let's stay with a ghost. We're going to be asking and talking, like I said, with one of the people who lived in the house that inspired the movie The Conjuring, and that is the most common question I know that she gets asked is, why did you stay in that house? Why did your family stay in that house? And I'm sure she's sick of answering that question, but we can, we can ask her. It's a whole new audience, so we got to know the answer to that question. But I'm going to try and when we do talk to her, get information about maybe some angles and areas of the case that have not been touched on all that much so far. Let's do one more call here at Real Ghost Stories Online before we wrap up our first episode. Hi, you're on the air.
Well, my ghost story is my granddaughter stayed the night one night, and she asked me to go find the rest of her tea set.
Okay.
So I'm in the room she's staying in, going through the toy box, and I'm going through the tea set. I pull out several pieces, and I thought she was behind me, so I'm handing her the pieces.
Mm-hmm.
And when I get done, I turn around, there's nobody there, and I go in the living room, and I say, where'd you put the pieces I gave you, honey? And my husband says, what pieces? She's been sitting in here with me all this time. And the next day they showed up after she left on the bed. But I don't know who I handed the pieces to, but I handed them to somebody.
When you realized that you weren't handing them to her, did you look around the house right away to try and find them?
Yes, I looked, and we couldn't find them. I thought they was playing a trick on me.
Wow. Handing off the pieces to a ghost child? Is that what was going on? You almost have to wonder. It's one of the most disturbing things about the paranormal and the whole topic of ghosts, especially if you encounter them. You're never really going to get that definitive answer of what was that just happened to me? What just came through me? What just occurred in my world? It's one of those things you just ask and share and maybe hold in because you don't want to appear crazy. On this show, we're going to try and tackle some of those topics and hopefully do a lot more sharing than holding in, and try and figure out what exactly this whole world of ghosts and paranormal is all about. Like I said earlier, we do want to hear your stories. Go to realghoststoriesonline.com, click on share your story with us or tell us your story. And we may just share it here on the show and get in contact with you as well to have you share it on the show. We can go back and forth and ask some questions and really dive into those experiences that may have haunted you. Be sure to subscribe to us as well on Facebook or on YouTube, and follow us on Twitter, because we have a lot more shows coming down in the following weeks and following months. Thank you for joining us for our first episode of Real Ghost Stories Online Radio. I'm Tony Bruschi.